In 2023, I ran my first marathon in a time of 4 hours, 29 minutes and 31 seconds, and 483 days later, completed my fourth marathon in a time of 3 hours, 12 minutes and 10 seconds. Today, I'm going to share how I shaved almost 1 hour and 20 minutes off of my marathon PB time, and share some guidance on how you can too. Let's get into it. So it all started back in 2023 when I was training for my first marathon, being the New York City Marathon, held in November at the end of the year, only having 6 real months to actually train from zero long distance running experience to the full marathon distance. This was the biggest physical challenge I'd ever been given in my life, with a lot of unknowns in particular. Would I even make the marathon distance? How the heck was I supposed to fuel myself during a run? And all these other questions that continued to bubble in my head. And the biggest challenge I faced was not having any long distance running experience. The furthest I'd ever run before was 16 kilometers when I was training for a virtual half marathon in Melbourne in late 2020, and ended up getting injured due to working from home and using my gaming chair as my office chair for the time being. But gradually over the year, the distance I covered slowly built from 10 kilometers to the half marathon to 30 kilometers, which was my longest run before heading over to New York to run the marathon. And for my first marathon, ran it in a time of 4 hours and 29 minutes after hitting the wall at the 28 kilometer mark, doing what was a run, walk, jog, whatever you would call it, to get myself to the finishing line in Central Park. I remember finishing the race in New York feeling quite disappointed in both myself but also my time. After all, over the course of the year, I missed barely any sessions too and noticed quite a significant increase in my fitness, so I knew this time wouldn't be the final time that I'd rest on. That's what immediately saw me sign up for my second, and then my third, and now most recently my fourth, shaving time off of my personal best in each marathon. While I received coaching for the New York City Marathon, I was rather enticed to plan my own training plans myself after completing a level 1 running coach accreditation here in Melbourne. Finding that each marathon, I decided to change 1 or 2 things when it came to the overall plan to my training. For my second marathon, this was nailing my nutrition to ensure I didn't hit the wall. For my third marathon, this was introducing more quality sessions into my training plan. And for my fourth marathon, this was increasing the overall mileage I covered over the training plan. And after running 4 marathons now, I do see how easy it can be to want to change all these different pieces to your race day plans, training, nutrition, etc. There's a whole piece to the puzzle that we're working with here as marathoners. I'm glad that I decided to stick to those 1 or 2 major changes in my training, which has allowed me to really experiment as to what works and doesn't work for me. In a way, each marathon training is an ongoing experiment just to see how far I can push myself with this running journey. Now that I've got 4 marathons worth of experience under my belt and the ability to shave well over an hour off of my personal best time, these were the key changes that allowed me to do so. First and foremost was increasing my nutrition. When running my first marathon, I really didn't understand what carb loading was, nor how to fuel myself properly during a race. When it came to my second, third, and fourth marathons, this was ensuring I was eating adequate carbohydrates before my runs during training to ensure I was fueled for them. And also experimenting with running nutrition options out there on my long runs each weekend. This was where I made one of my biggest changes to my marathon prep in using isotonic gels, which are more water-based in comparison to some gels like Goo or even Maurten, which can be either quite thick and goopy or quite jelly-like if you're having the Maurtens. For me, those textures really play with my ability to actually consume them while I was running. Whereas with isotonic gels, it was almost like drinking flavored water to get them down. Next was increasing my mileage. Now, this wasn't increasing the amount of quality sessions I was doing. This was more so just ensuring I was doing enough easy running during the week that allowed me to run more often. For example, a majority of my long runs are still completed at an easy pace. Looking back to my Tokyo Marathon build, all of my long runs were easy, not including any marathon efforts or surges in those. And surprisingly, still managed to shave almost 20 minutes off of my Chicago time, which was 3 hours 30 minutes to 3 hours 12 minutes in Tokyo. Next was having a dedicated shoe rotation. Now, this wasn't quite important for my first and even my second marathons. However, for my third and fourth, I feel like I really benefited from those. having a shoe that would serve a different purpose in the lineup. For example, my Superblast 2s were used for my long runs, my Asics Magic Speed 4s were used for my quality sessions, and then my normal Asics Nimbus 26s as well as my Nova Blast 4s used to absorb most of the easy miles during the week. Especially for Tokyo Marathon training, where I was running upwards of 80 kilometers all the way up to 105 kilometers in peak week, you obviously spend a lot of time out there on your feet and you can actually run through your shoes quite quickly. However, having 4 or 5 shoes in my dedicated rotation allowed me to kind of even out the mileage across them. And while it was a little bit of an investment upfront before starting my Tokyo training, at least I've got this selection of shoes that I can still carry on into what marathon I'm training for next. The next change was consistent training. Now, there was a bit of a mix when it came to my training for the New York City Marathon, having both runs, strength training, but also quite a lot of cross training. Looking forward to my second, third, and fourth marathons, this was a majority running and then also complemented with strength training. So using Tokyo as my most recent example, running 6 days a week and strength training twice a week in the gym. And for a contrast from my first marathon compared to my most recent 3 marathons, I have rarely missed any sessions in my following 3 marathons after training for the New York City Marathon, which I believe has helped me stay relatively injury-free, but also able to really increase my mileage as a result. The final change was embracing discomfort. Now, this was most apparent in my 4th marathon, where I really wanted to leave as much of my effort out there on the course. For my first marathon, mental strength didn't really come into the equation after not really respecting the distance from the start, going out way too hot in the first few kilometers and then crashing and burning at the 28k mark. Compared to Tokyo, where I was running comfortably uncomfortable for a majority of the race, holding quite a quick pace that, in comparison to my first, never thought would have been possible had I kept consistent with my training. In Tokyo, I'd say I really hit the wall at the 36k mark and wasn't able to push into another gear. However, with the mental strength that I was really working on in my training, repeated my positive mantras to myself and kept in a positive headspace to still continue on and not actually stop at all, which I'd done in all of my previous ones. Reflecting now on where I am in my marathon and running journey, I feel like my biggest takeaway was sticking to the long game. So not being in it for the quick fixes that see the sudden improvements over time, it was more seeing, okay, what can I do now that will help me in the next marathon or even the marathon after to build that solid foundation and base. And for those of you that regularly tune into my videos, know that my long-term running goal is to eventually Boston qualify as well. So knowing I've still got quite a lot of work and small changes I need to make to actually get there. And I'll be honest, I myself am seeing quite a significant improvement in my own running journey after training consistently for just under 2 years. So I'm now at a point where I feel like there are only 2 key changes that I think will help elevate me to go for a Boston qualifier time. The first, and this is something that I still struggle with today, is improving my nutrition. For Tokyo, I only managed to stomach 4 gels before inevitably hitting the wall. Whereas if I'm looking to do a Boston qualifier time, need to train my stomach to take on an additional amount of carbs that will fuel me right through the marathon distance. And secondly is adding some marathon pace efforts into my long runs. I'm now at a point where my body can handle the training loads that I've been putting it under. So I feel like this is the next progression in my running journey to ensure I can sustain marathon or Boston qualifier pace for the full 42.195 kilometers. And for me, these are 2 relatively manageable changes that I can make to my training. It's not suddenly looking at investing in the best carbon plated racer shoe technology or thinking out how I can use these recovery tools to get myself running even longer and more often. It's just these 2 basic things that I know can really help me shift the needle in the direction that I want it to go. And obviously I'm chasing that damn unicorn at the moment. And lastly, pushing through my most recent marathon training block made me realize the early mornings, the struggles, the tiredness, the hunger, and just the fatigue levels were all worth it. Being able to cross that finishing line in Tokyo feeling like That was the first time in my marathon journey where I felt super proud of myself. This success also came during quite a low point in my life recently too, where I was in a position where I just wasn't myself and was looking for a change. And in a way, marathon training was something that I could look forward to each morning and stick to over the long period of time to at least keep me pushing towards a goal that I was passionate about. Everyone starts their running journey somewhere, and if you stick to it, make smart changes, and commit to being consistent, you too can see significant changes in your PB times. And I'm saying this as someone coming into 2023 had no idea what to expect when it came to marathon training. If I can do it, you can too. So there we have it, friends. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Leave a like if you enjoyed this kind of content, and let me know down below what current event you're training for. I'm Jack, and I'll see you next time. Catch up.